Everyone wants to know one number. How much do I need to retire? 1 million? 2 million? Some fellow on television says 2.5, and he says it with such confidence that you write it down. And then you go look at your own account balance, and you do the subtraction, and the gap between what you have and what he told you to have becomes the thing that sits on your chest at 3 in the morning. But here is what almost nobody tells you. That big number, the lump sum, the finish line everyone points at, is not the number that runs your retirement. It never was. The number that actually runs your retirement is much smaller, it arrives once a month, and it gets almost no airtime, because it doesn't make for a frightening headline and it doesn't sell you anything. So today I want to do something different. I want to take $500,000, $500,000, a number a great many people quietly have and quietly assume is not enough. And I want to show you exactly what it does. Not what it's worth on paper. What it puts in your pocket month after month in the life you would actually be living. Let's start with the honest math, because everything else depends on it. There is a rule of thumb that has anchored retirement planning for about 30 years now. It came from a financial planner named William Bengen, who went back through decades of market history and asked a simple question: how much can a person pull out of their savings each year without running out of money over a long retirement? The answer he landed on was around 4% in the first year, adjusted a little each year for inflation after that. It is not a law of physics, it's a guideline, and a cautious one, and we'll talk about where it strains. But it gives us a place to stand. 4% of $500,000 is $20,000 a year. Split that across 12 months, and you get roughly $1,667 a month. Now, I know what that feels like when you first hear it. It feels small. You spent 30 or 40 years building that $500,000, and it hands you back $1,600 a month. That can't be the whole story. And it isn't, because that money does not arrive alone. For most people watching this, there's a second check coming, and it's larger than the first. The average Social Security retirement benefit in 2026 is about $2,080 a month. That figure comes straight from the Social Security Administration, and it reflects the cost of living adjustment that took effect this past January. Now, average is doing some work in that sentence. Some people get quite a bit less, some get more, and it depends heavily on your earnings history and the age you claim. But for a typical worker, that's the neighborhood. So put the two together: $1,667 from your savings, roughly $2,080 from Social Security. That's about $3,750 a month, a little under $45,000 a year before taxes. That right there is the number nobody talks about. Not the $500,000, not the $2 million the man on television waved at you. This one, because this is the number you actually live on. A quick, honest footnote before we go further. That $45,000 is before taxes, and how much the tax man actually takes depends on where that money sits. A dollar pulled from a traditional IRA is taxed as ordinary income. A dollar from a Roth generally isn't, and a portion of your Social Security may be taxable depending on your total income for the year. For a lot of retirees at this income level, the real bite is modest. But it isn't zero, and it's one of the things a decent plan accounts for instead of pretending away. So keep the number honest in your head, call it $45,000 gross, and somewhat less in your hand. And here's the part that tends to stop people cold when they first sit with it. That $500,000 you were quietly apologizing for, it puts you ahead of most of the people your age. Look at the actual data. According to figures drawn from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, among American households that have any retirement savings at all, only about 9% have $500,000 or more set aside. The median household headed by someone between 65 and 74, the middle of the pack, the true typical retiree, has around $200,000. Not 500, 200. So if you're sitting on $500,000 and feeling behind, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are, statistically, near the front of the line. The feeling of being behind is manufactured. It comes from people who make their living by pointing at a number just above yours and telling you it's the only safe one. Now, I am not going to stand here and tell you 500,000 is enough, full stop. That would be its own kind of dishonesty, and this channel doesn't traffic in that. Whether it's enough is not a question about the money. It's a question about the gap between what comes in each month and what goes out. So let's look at how that gap actually moves, because it moves more than you'd think.
Good.
And the two biggest levers are your age and your spending. Start with age, because it changes both checks at once. Say you retire at 62, the earliest you can claim Social Security. Two things happen, and neither of them is in your favor. First, claiming that early permanently reduces your benefit. For someone whose full retirement age is 67, claiming at 62 cuts it by about 30%. So a benefit that would have been $2,080 becomes something closer to $1,450. Second, retiring at 62 means your money has to last longer, potentially 30 plus years. So a careful person pulls a little less from savings, maybe 3.5% instead of 4%. That's about $1,460 a month from the portfolio. Add them up, and you're around $2,900 a month, roughly $35,000 a year. And there's a hidden cost hiding in those early years. Medicare doesn't start until 65, so from 62 to 65, you're buying your own health coverage, which for many people is the single most expensive line item of their early retirement. Now run the same $500,000 at the other end. Say you wait until 70 to claim Social Security. Every year you delay past your full retirement age, your benefit grows by roughly 8%. So by 70, that same benefit is about 24% larger. Call it $2,580 a month for the rest of your life, inflation adjusted. And because you're starting later, your savings have a shorter runway, so you can reasonably pull a bit more, say 4.5%, about $1,875 a month. Put those together and you're up around $4,400 a month, better than $53,000 a year. Same $500,000, same person. But depending on when you turn on the taps, the monthly number swings from $2,900 to $4,400. A difference of $18,000 a year, every year, for life. That is what people mean, or ought to mean, when they say retirement is about strategy, and not just about the size of the pile. The pile didn't change. The decisions around it did. I want to pause here for a second, because if you're doing this math along with me, you may already be realizing something that took me years to say out loud to the people I sat across from. The amount you saved was rarely the thing standing between someone and a good retirement. It was the plan around it. That idea is the whole reason I wrote a short book called You Don't Need $2 Million, because I watched too many people with perfectly workable savings talk themselves into fear over a number some stranger invented. I'll come back to that at the end. For now, let's keep going, because we still haven't talked about the other side of the ledger. Spending. Because a monthly income of $3,750 means something completely different depending on the life it's paying for. If your house is paid off, that changes everything. Housing is the largest expense in most American retirements, and if it's handled, no mortgage, no rent, then that $3,750 a month goes an astonishingly long way toward groceries, utilities, insurance, a car that's already bought, and the ordinary texture of a comfortable week. In much of the country, a paid-off home plus that income isn't scraping by. It's genuinely comfortable. If you're still carrying a mortgage or paying rent, the picture tightens fast. A $1,500 housing payment eats 40% of that income before you've bought a single thing to eat. Now the same $500,000 that felt comfortable a paragraph ago feels stretched. Nothing about the money changed. The obligations did. Let me make this concrete, because it depends is a frustrating answer, and you deserve better than that. Picture the paid-off version. $3,750 a month coming in. Set aside $400 for utilities and home insurance and the taxes on the house. $600 for groceries, $250 for a car you already own. Gas, insurance, the occasional repair. $300 for the medical costs Medicare doesn't cover, the premiums, the co-pays, a supplement plan. $200 for a phone and internet and the small subscriptions that quietly stack up. That's roughly $1,750, and you've covered every necessity of an ordinary life, what's left, around $2,000 a month, is yours. That's dinners out, a grandchild's birthday, a trip in the fall, the hobby you finally have time for. That is not survival. That is a life with room in it. Now take the exact same income and drop a $1,500 rent payment on top. Suddenly that $2,000 of breathing room collapses to $500. Same money, same person. One settled house between comfort and strain. Which is exactly why when someone asks me whether $500,000 is enough, my first question is never about the $500,000. It's, tell me about your housing. And then there's the wild card that I won't pretend away. Health. Medicare covers a great deal, but it does not cover everything, and it does not cover long-term care. The nursing home, assisted living kind of care that a meaningful share of people will need at some point. That is the genuine risk in a $500,000 retirement, not running out of money on ordinary living, running into an extraordinary expense that ordinary planning didn't fence off. So let me pull all of this back together because I don't want to leave you with a scatter of numbers. $500,000 is not a finish line, and it's not a failure. It is an engine. On its own, it produces about $1,600 a month. Paired with an average Social Security benefit, it produces somewhere between roughly $2,900 and $4,400 a month, depending mostly on when you claim. That puts you ahead of the large majority of your peers. And whether it delivers a comfortable retirement or a strained one comes down not to the size of the number, but to three things almost entirely within your control. When you turn on your income, whether your housing is settled, and how carefully you've fenced off the big risks. That is the truth the lump sum conversation hides from you. It stares at the pile and asks, is it big enough? When the real question was always, what does it produce? And does that cover the life I actually want to live? Those are different questions. The first one is designed to make you anxious. The second one is answerable, often for people in far better shape than they believe. Which brings me back to that book. I wrote, you don't need $2 million for exactly the person who's felt this whole video in their stomach. Someone who has saved something real, $500,000 or $300,000 or whatever the honest number is, and has spent years being told by louder people that it isn't enough. The book walks through how to turn what you actually have into a monthly paycheck you can count on, how the claiming decision alone can swing your income by tens of thousands of dollars a year, and how to build a plan that stands between an ordinary expense and an extraordinary one. It is plain spoken, it is short, it is meant to be read at the kitchen table, and it costs less than a dinner out. The link is below this video. If today's numbers gave you even a little more room to breathe, that book is where the breathing room turns into a plan. Because here is the last thing, and I mean it as plainly as I can say anything. The number that runs your retirement was never the one on the billboard. It's the quiet one that arrives every month. And more of you can build a good life on that quiet number than I've ever been told so. I'll see you in the next one.